I'm Willow 32 standing outside my dad's 60th birthday bash. My fingers tight around a scrapbook, I poured my heart into its pages heavy with memories. The venue glows with chandeliers, laughter and clinking glasses spilling out into the crisp night. But my sister Sienna blocks the door, her eyes raking over my faded sweater and jeans with a sneer. "No cheap clothes allowed, Willow," she says, her voice cold as the evening air bites my skin. "You don't belong here." My chest tightens, her words, cutting deep, but there's a truth they don't know, a secret that's kept me steady all these years. I'm not just the daughter they've overlooked. I built something they can't imagine, something bigger than their judgment. Have you ever been judged for being yourself, pushed aside for not fitting in? Share where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this night flipped my world upside down, revealing who I really am. The cold night air stung my cheeks as I stood frozen outside the venue, Sienna's words echoing in my head like a bad song that wouldn't stop. I gripped the scrapbook tighter, its worn edges digging into my palms, a lifeline to why I came. Earlier today, I'd been buzzing with hope, picturing Dad's face lighting up when he saw my gift, his eyes crinkling the way they used to. At 32, I'd carved out a life I was proud of, running a nonprofit that helped families claw their way back from hardship, living simply in a studio apartment with creaky floors, a leaky faucet, and secondhand furniture that smelled faintly of old wood. But standing here rejected, I felt like that awkward kid again, always lost in Sienna's shadow. Her sparkle outshining my quiet existence, her elegance a language I never learned. This morning I'd woken before dawn, my heart racing with anticipation, a nervous hum in my veins, like a song I couldn't shake. I sat at my chipped kitchen table, gluing photos into the scrapbook, each one a fragile thread to Dad, a piece of a past I hoped he still held dear. There was one from when I was 8, us at the county fair, him holding my hand as I clutched a cotton candy bigger than my head, his laugh warm and unguarded, the kind that made me feel safe. Those moments were rare. Dad was always consumed by his real estate empire, his phone buzzing with deals, and Sienna was his mirror, chasing luxury and status with a hunger I never understood. I was the odd one out, curled up with books, my dreams too small for his world, my heart too soft for his ambitions. I'd spent hours choosing each photo, my fingers tracing their edges, my coffee going cold as I lingered on a picture of us by a lake, my tiny hand in his, as he showed me how to skip stones. I'd hoped these images would remind him of the daughter he used to know, the one who still believed in him. I'd driven to the venue with butterflies in my stomach, rehearsing words I'd never dared say, my old sedan rattling along the highway. We hadn't spoken much since I left home at 18, tired of being invisible, my suitcase packed with more resentment than clothes, my heart bruised but determined. This party felt like a chance to mend things, to show him I was still here. Still his, even if I didn't fit his world of wealth. The venue rose ahead, all glass and gold music pulsing like a heartbeat, the kind of place that screamed money. I parked my beat-up sedan among sleek sports cars, their polished surfaces mocking my rust-streaked hood, their shine a reminder of how far I stood from this world. I smoothed my sweater, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, plain unpolished, but me and walked to the entrance, the scrapbook tucked under my arm, my steps light with hope, my breath catching with nerves. Then Sienna stopped me. Her voice was sharp, her designer gown catching the light like a blade, its silk shimmering with every move. "Willow, you can't come in looking like a thrift store reject. This is Dad's night." The words hit like a slap, and I felt eyes on me, guests in tuxedos and glittering dresses, their whispers slicing through the air like shards of glass. I tried to speak, to tell her I just wanted to see Dad, to give him something that mattered, but she shut the door, leaving me in the dark, the click of the latch final and cold. My chest tightened, a familiar ache blooming sharp and raw. I stood on the gravel, my breath clouding in the cold, questioning everything. Had I misread Dad's heart? Was I still the daughter he'd rather forget, the one who didn't belong? I lingered there, the gravel crunching under my sneakers, the scrapbook heavier with every passing second, its weight pulling at my arms. I thought of calling a cab, of leaving this all behind, driving back to my quiet life where no one judged my clothes. My fingers brushed a photo's edge through the cover. A snapshot of Dad teaching me to skip stones, his smile wide, as I cheered for a perfect arc. I'd been so proud that day, his approval all I needed. Now the memory felt like a lie, a story I'd told myself to keep going. The laughter inside the venue grew louder, a wall between me and the family I'd come to reclaim. I wanted to run to toss the scrapbook into my car and drive until the city lights faded, but a stubborn spark kept me rooted, a whisper of defiance telling me I wasn't ready to surrender, not yet. My hand trembled as I pushed open the heavy glass door, the scrapbook tucked tightly under my arm, its weight a reminder of why I was here. The warmth of the venue hit me, but it did nothing to thaw the chill in my chest, the echo of Sienna's rejection still ringing. The party was a whirlwind of elegance, golden chandeliers, casting soft light over marble floors, a jazz quartet playing in the corner, their notes smooth but distant, and guests gliding in tailored suits and shimmering gowns, their movements polished, effortless. My sneakers squeaked faintly, drawing glances from a nearby couple, their raised eyebrows like silent accusations, their wineglasses catching the light. I squared my shoulders, determined to find Dad and hand him the scrapbook before I lost my nerve, before the weight of their stares pushed me out. A security guard near the entrance caught my eye. His broad frame familiar, his face lined with years of quiet watchfulness. Curtis, his name tag read. He gave me a small nod, like he remembered me from years ago when I'd tag along to Dad's office, a shy kid clutching a library book, my hair always a mess. "Good to see you, Miss Willow," he murmured, stepping aside, his voice low but kind. His kindness gave me a flicker of courage, enough to keep moving through the crowd, though the scent of expensive cologne and the glint of diamond cufflinks made me feel like an intruder in a world I didn't belong to. I spotted Dad across the room, his silver hair catching the light as he laughed with a group of men in tuxedos, their voices booming with confidence. Sienna was at his side. Her smile polished, her hand resting on his arm like she owned the moment, her gown shimmering under the lights. My heart pounded as I weaved through the guests, their perfumes and colognes mixing into a dizzying haze, their chatter a wall I had to push through. I was almost there, my fingers tightening on the scrapbook, when Sienna's eyes locked onto me. Her smile vanished, and she strode toward me with purpose, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, each step a warning that echoed in my chest. "Willow, what are you doing?" she hissed, pulling me into a quiet corner near a towering floral arrangement, its roses heavy with scent, their petals brushing my arm. Her voice was low, but every word cut deep sharp as the thorns I imagined hidden in the blooms. "I told you you're not welcome here. Dad doesn't need your sad little gift ruining his night." I opened my mouth to protest, but she leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming, her eyes cold as glass. "He approved the guest list, you know. And the dress code. You think he wanted you here looking like this?" Her words landed like a punch, stealing my breath, my vision blurring for a moment. Dad had approved this, the man who'd once called me his little champ, who'd lifted me onto his shoulders at the fair, had agreed to keep me out. I clutched the scrapbook tighter, my fingers whitening the paper, crinkling under my grip, its edges biting into my skin. "Sienna, I just want to give him this," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, though my chest ached with doubt, a crack spreading through my hope. "It's not about you or your perfect party." She scoffed, folding her arms, her bracelet glinting like a warning. "You're embarrassing him. You're embarrassing all of us. Just leave before you make a scene." Her eyes flicked to a woman nearby, her sleek black dress and diamond earrings screaming wealth, her posture perfect. The woman, Jillian, I overheard someone call her, smirked as she caught Sienna's words, her lips curling in amusement. "Is that the charity case?" Jillian said loudly, her voice dripping with mockery, loud enough to turn heads. "Crashing a party like this? Bold." My face burned, the humiliation sinking into my bones, heavy and relentless. I wanted to shrink, to disappear into the polished floor, to vanish from their gazes. But I glanced at Dad again, still laughing, oblivious to me, his world so far from mine, his joy untouchable. Had he really signed off on shutting me out? The thought dragged me back to a memory, me at 16, standing in his office, overhearing him tell Sienna I'd never amount to much, because I didn't chase his version of success. That old wound tore open raw and aching as Jillian's laugh echoed in my ears, a cruel chorus that made my hands tremble. I stood there pinned by Sienna's glare and Jillian's mocking laugh, the air in the corner feeling thick like I was drowning in it, the floral scent choking me. My eyes darted to Dad again, hoping he'd look my way, sense my presence, but he was deep in conversation, his back to me, surrounded by men in crisp suits, their laughter a wall I couldn't breach. The scrapbook in my hands felt like a weight pulling me down its pages, a foolish dream I should have left at home, a relic of a bond I'd imagined. I wanted to push past Sienna, to run to him, to make him see me, but my feet wouldn't move, rooted by doubt and shame. Sienna stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, her breath warm against my ear. "You think you can just waltz in here and play the devoted daughter Dad's moved on Willow? He doesn't need your nostalgia trip." Her words sliced deeper than before, each one a reminder of every time I'd been pushed aside, my existence a footnote in their glittering lives. I tried to speak, but my throat tightened, the hurt choking me, my voice lost in the storm of her disdain. "You don't get it," she continued, her eyes cold as the marble beneath us, unyielding. "This is his world now. You're just leftover." I glanced around, desperate for an ally, a single face that didn't judge. But the guests nearby were watching like I was a sideshow, their eyes sharp with curiosity. Jillian leaned toward a man in a velvet jacket, whispering, "She's probably here to beg for a handout." The man snickered, his laugh a low rumble, and my chest burned with shame, the heat rising to my face. I wanted to scream that I wasn't here for money, that I'd built my own life, my own success, a world they couldn't imagine. But who would believe me, dressed in my faded sweater, standing in their glittering world, my presence an offense to their elegance? Then Greg appeared, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking between me and Sienna, his tie slightly askew, betraying his discomfort. "Willow enough," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn their conversations, pausing. "You're making a spectacle. People are talking, saying you're here to guilt-trip your dad for cash." His words hit like a slap, twisting my intentions into something ugly, something I'd never meant. I shook my head, my voice barely a whisper, trembling with effort. "That's not true, Greg. I just wanted to see him." He crossed his arms, his voice rising, carrying over the jazz, drawing more eyes. "Then why show up looking like you're homeless? You're embarrassing the family." The room seemed to shrink, the murmurs growing louder, a wave of judgment crashing over me, relentless and cold. I caught a glimpse of Curtis, the security guard, watching from the edge of the crowd, his face tense, his hands clasped tightly. But he couldn't help me now. I was alone, exposed, the daughter who didn't belong, my heart sinking under the weight of their words. A memory flashed me at 12, sitting at the dinner table, Dad praising Sienna's new pageant crown, while I tried to show him my science fair ribbon, its blue fabric bright with my pride. He'd barely glanced at it, his attention already gone, his eyes on Sienna's smile. Now standing here, I felt that same invisibility, only worse magnified by the crowd's stares. Sienna's voice cut through again, sharp and final, her words a blade. "Willow, you're upsetting everyone. Just go before Dad has to deal with this." I stumbled back, the scrapbook slipping slightly in my sweaty hands, my fingers trembling. My eyes burned, but I refused to let tears fall, not in front of them, not here. I turned, searching for an escape, my gaze landing on a small side room off the main hall, its door slightly ajar, promising quiet. I slipped inside the door, clicking shut behind me, muffling the party's noise, the jazz fading to a distant hum. The silence was heavy, pressing against my chest. As I sank against the wall, the weight of their words crushing me, leaving me gasping. Had I been wrong about Dad all along? The side room was dim lit, only by a single lamp casting shadows on a wall lined with old family photos, their frames slightly dusty, forgotten relics of a different time. I leaned against the door, my breath shallow, the scrapbook still clutched to my chest like a shield, its weight grounding me. The muffled jazz from the party seeped through, but it felt a world away, an echo from a life I didn't fit into. I scanned the photos. Dad smiling at a ribbon cutting, his suit crisp, Sienna in a prom dress, her smile radiant, and one of me, maybe 10, grinning with a fishing pole, my hair tangled from the wind. That girl felt like a stranger now. Her hope a distant memory I could barely touch. I slid down the wall, sitting on the cool floor, my knees pulled up the scrapbook resting against them. I opened it, my fingers trembling as I traced a photo of me and Dad building a sandcastle, his hands guiding mine, both of us laughing under a summer sun. I'd believed then that I was enough for him. Now the memory stung a reminder of what I'd lost. I couldn't stay hidden forever, not when I'd come this far. I straightened, wiping my damp cheeks, and decided to find Dad one last time. If he wanted me gone, I'd hear it from him, not Sienna's venom or Greg's accusations. I stepped back into the hall, the bright lights jarring after the quiet, the chandelier's glow harsh against my eyes. The crowd parted slightly as I moved, their whispers trailing me like a spotlight, their curiosity sharp. I saw Dad near a grand staircase, his laugh booming as he toasted with a group of investors, their glasses clinking, their world so polished and far from mine. My heart raced, but I kept walking, each step heavier than the last, my fingers tightening on the scrapbook, its edges worn from years of hope. Before I could reach him, Sienna appeared, her face twisted with irritation, her eyes blazing. She grabbed the scrapbook from my hands, her nails grazing my skin, leaving a faint sting that burned. "What is this, Willow?" she snapped, flipping it open with a sneer, her movements sharp. "Some pathetic attempt to win Dad over?" She held up a page, a photo of me and Dad at a park, my gap-toothed smile beaming as he pointed at a duck in the pond, our laughter frozen in time. Her laugh was sharp, cutting through the chatter like a knife drawing eyes. "This junk won't impress anyone. You're embarrassing yourself." She tossed the scrapbook onto a nearby table, and it landed with a thud, pages splaying open, the sound echoing in my ears like a gunshot. I felt my face flush, the room's gaze pinning me in place, a specimen under glass. I reached for it, but Sienna stepped in front, blocking me, her posture rigid, her eyes daring me to push back. "Just stop," she said, her voice loud enough to turn heads, her words a public shaming. "You're making a fool of yourself, and Dad doesn't need this." Then I saw him, Dad, turning from his group, his eyes landing on the open scrapbook, his brow furrowed with confusion. He walked over, his steps slow, like he was approaching something fragile, his presence drawing the room's attention. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the photo of us at the park, his face softening for a fleeting moment, a flicker of the Dad I remembered. I held my breath, hoping he'd remember that day, the way he'd laughed when I named the duck wattles, his voice warm with pride. But his face hardened, and he looked at me, his voice low, almost regretful, cutting deeper than I expected. "Willow, why are you here dressed like that? This isn't the place." His words hit harder than Sienna's, a quiet betrayal that stole my breath, leaving me hollow, my hope crumbling. Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the tension, warm and steady like a lifeline. "Harold." One of Dad's biggest investors stepped forward, his suit impeccable, his smile genuine, his presence calm amid the storm. "Madam Chairman." "I didn't know this was your father's celebration," he said, his words clear, deliberate. The words hung in the air and the room went still, glasses frozen, mid-air eyes wide, the jazz fading to a hush. Sienna's head snapped toward him, her laugh nervous, almost frantic, her composure cracking. "Chairman." "You've got the wrong person," she said, gesturing at me dismissively, her voice trembling with disbelief. But Harold's eyes stayed on me, steady and certain, and my secret, the one I'd guarded for years, was suddenly exposed, raw and undeniable, leaving me bare before the crowd. My heart stopped as Harold's words echoed in the silent room, the weight of them crashing over me like a wave. Every eye turned to me, a sea of stunned faces. Their glasses paused mid-sip, the jazz quartet's notes fading into a hush that felt deafening. I stood frozen, my sweater suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds, its frayed hem, a stark contrast to the room's elegance, my jeans scuffed and out of place. Dad's gaze locked onto mine, his expression shifting from confusion to something I couldn't read, disbelief maybe, or shame. His eyes searching for an answer I wasn't ready to give. "Willow," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, cutting through the stillness like a blade. You're the chairman of Sterling Ventures. I nodded, my throat dry. The truth I'd hidden for years spilling out in front of everyone, raw and unfiltered. Yes, I managed, my voice trembling, barely audible, my hands shaking at my sides. I've been running it under a pseudonym. I didn't want. I trailed off, unsure how to explain that I'd built an empire to prove I was more than the daughter he'd overlooked, that I'd wanted to stand on my own, free from his shadow, or Sienna's scorn, to carve a space where I could breathe. Sienna's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, her perfect composure cracking like thin ice. Then she laughed, a brittle sound that shattered the silence, her eyes darting around for support, her hands trembling. This is ridiculous. She's lying. My sister, a chairman, look at her. She gestured at my worn jeans, her voice rising, drawing more stares, her fingers shaking as she pointed her bracelet, catching the light. Guests murmured their whispers like knives, sharp and relentless, cutting through the air. She's playing you all, Sienna insisted, turning to Harold, her voice pleading now, desperate. Tell them you made a mistake. Harold frowned, his calm unshaken, his presence a quiet authority that needed no defense. No mistake. Ms. Willow has led Sterling Ventures for years. She's the reason your father's latest project exists. His words were a bomb, and the room erupted in gasps, glasses clinking as hands shook the air thick with shock. I saw Jillian, the woman who'd called me a charity case, clutch her necklace, her eyes wide with horror, her earlier smirk gone, replaced by a flush of embarrassment. Other guests exchanged glances, some stepping closer, their curiosity palpable, their whispers turning to questions, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. Dad's face crumpled, his hand still holding the scrapbook, his knuckles white, his eyes glistening with something unspoken. You've been funding me, he asked, his voice raw, almost breaking the words, heavy with realization. All this time I nodded again, the weight of his question crushing me, my heart pounding in my ears, a drumbeat of truth. I'd poured millions into his projects, wanting to support him without needing his approval, without the weight of his expectations, my contributions hidden behind a name no one knew. But now, standing here, I felt exposed, like my heart had been ripped open for everyone to see, every scar laid bare under the chandelier's glare. Sienna spun on me, her eyes blazing, her voice a hiss that carried across the room, sharp and venomous. You let us think you were nothing, she shouted, her words echoing off the chandeliers. Her face flushed with betrayal, her hands clenched into fists. You hid this to make me look like a fool. Her accusations stung, twisting my intentions into something cruel, something I'd never meant, her anger a mirror of my own buried pain. I wanted to explain, to say I'd hidden it to protect myself, to avoid their judgment, to carve out a space where I could be enough. But the words wouldn't come, stuck in my throat like glass, my voice lost in the storm of her rage. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their stares boring into me, and I felt like I was shrinking, my secret now, a weapon turned against me, my truth, a wound exposed to all. Dad stepped closer, his eyes searching mine, but he didn't speak, his silence a chasm I couldn't cross. The silence between us was heavier than any words, a weight that pressed against my chest. Sienna grabbed his arm, her voice desperate, almost pleading, her composure gone. She's manipulating you, Dad. She's always been jealous, trying to steal your attention. Her words were a final blow, painting me as the villain in a story I'd never wanted to write, twisting my love into something selfish. I stood there, my chest hollow, the scrapbook on the table, a forgotten relic, as the room waited for Dad to choose a side, my heart hanging in the balance, fragile and exposed. The room felt like it was closing, and Sienna's accusations ringing in my ears. Dad's silence, a heavy weight that pressed against my chest, threatening to crush me. I stood there, the crowd's eyes on me, their whispers, a dull roar, each one a reminder of how out of place I seemed in my faded sweater and scuffed jeans. My hands shook, but something inside me shifted, a spark of defiance, small but growing like a flame catching dry wood in a quiet forest. I'd spent years hiding my strength, letting their judgment define me, shrinking to fit their expectations, bending under the weight of their dismissal. Not tonight. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, the air cool against my flushed skin, and stepped toward the center of the room, my sneakers soft against the polished floor, each step a quiet rebellion against the years of being unseen. I faced the guests, my voice quiet but clear, cutting through the tension like a steady hand through water. I'm Willow, and yes, I'm the chairman of Sterling Ventures. I built it from nothing, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove to myself I could. The words felt strange, like admitting a truth I'd buried too long, a weight lifting with each syllable, my heart steadying as I spoke. Faces in the crowd softened, some nodding, others looking away, caught off guard by my calm, their earlier judgment wavering. I turned to Sienna, her eyes wide with shock, her hands frozen mid-gesture, her bracelet glinting under the lights, and kept my tone even deliberate. I came here to celebrate Dad, not to fight you. This isn't about winning. I walked to the table where the scrapbook lay, its pages still open to that park photo, the duck we'd laughed over, frozen in time, a moment I'd held on to through years of distance. I picked it up, my fingers brushing the worn cover, the paper soft under my touch, and held it out to Dad. "This is for you," I said, my voice catching raw with hope, the words trembling but true. "It's not about money or status. It's about us, those moments we had before everything got so complicated." His eyes met mine, glistening, and for a second, I saw the Dad who taught me to tie a fishing knot, his hands patient, his smile warm, not the man who'd let me fade into the background, his empire swallowing our bond. Sienna opened her mouth, her face flushed, her eyes darting with panic, but I raised a hand, cutting her off. My voice firmer now, steady with a strength I hadn't known. I had a fire I'd kept hidden. "Let me finish," I said the words, carrying a weight that silenced her, the room stilling around us. "I've spent years supporting this family, funding Dad's projects, not because I wanted praise, but because I believed in him. I don't need your approval, Sienna, but I'm done letting you erase me." The room was silent, the jazz quartet pausing between songs, amplifying my words, their echo filling the space. I felt the weight of every stare, but for the first time it didn't crush me. It fueled me, a quiet power rising in my chest. I turned to the crowd, my heart pounding but steady, my voice rising just enough to hold their attention, each word deliberate, grounded. "I know how I look tonight doesn't fit your world. But I've learned worth isn't in what you wear, it's in what you do. I run a nonprofit that lifts up people who've been judged, overlooked, just like I was tonight." My voice grew stronger, each word a step toward reclaiming my place, a declaration of who I'd become, not for them, but for me. I glanced at Curtis, the security guard standing by the wall, his face lit with a quiet pride, his eyes steady. He gave a small smile, a nod that felt like a lifeline, grounding me in this moment, reminding me I wasn't alone. Sienna's face twisted, her hands clenched, her bracelet glinting as she struggled for words, her composure crumbling. But I didn't back down. I looked at Dad, still holding the scrapbook, his expression unreadable, caught between shock and something softer, his eyes searching mine. "I'm here because I love you," I said, my voice soft but unflinching, each word a truth I'd held too long, a weight I was finally setting down. "But I won't beg to be seen." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea, as I stood tall, feeling the strength I'd hidden for years start to unfurl inside me, a quiet fire ready to burn, steady and unyielding. The silence after my words felt like a held breath, the room suspended in a moment that could shatter any second, the air thick with anticipation. Dad stood there, the scrapbook open in his hands, his eyes fixed on the page of us at the park, the memory frozen in time, a moment I'd clung to through years of distance. I'd just laid my truth bare, and for the first time I didn't feel small, my shoulders squared, my heart steady, despite the storm inside. The guests watched, their earlier whispers replaced by a tense quiet, as if waiting for the world to tilt back into place, their eyes flickering between me, Dad, and Sienna. My heart pounded, but I stood firm, my sneakers planted on the polished floor, my resolve a steady anchor in the chaos. Dad's fingers tightened on the scrapbook, and he looked up at me, his face a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle, regret maybe, or pride, his eyes glistening with something unspoken. "Willow," he said, his voice rough, almost breaking. I didn't know. Those 3 words hit me soft but heavy, like a confession I hadn't expected, a crack in the wall between us. He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I saw the man who'd once carried me on his shoulders laughing as we explored a creek, his voice warm with stories, not the distant figure I'd grown to expect consumed by his empire and its demands. Sienna broke the moment, her heels clicking as she moved toward Dad, her face pale but her voice sharp, cutting through the stillness like a blade. "You can't seriously believe her," she said, her laugh thin and forced, betraying her panic, her hands trembling slightly. "She's spinning a story to make us look bad." But her words faltered as she glanced at Harold, who stood nearby, his expression calm but unwavering, his presence a silent confirmation of my truth, unshakable. Sienna's eyes darted to Greg, seeking backup, but he looked down, his hands stuffed in his pockets. His silence louder than any argument, a crack in their united front that left her exposed. A woman in a silver dress approached her business card, extended like an olive branch, her smile hesitant but genuine, her eyes kind. "Ms. Willow, I run a foundation in Chicago. I'd love to discuss your nonprofit's work." Her voice was warm, cutting through the tension, and I felt a flicker of surprise. Someone here saw me, not the sweater or the drama, but the person I'd become, the work I'd built. Other guests began to murmur, their tones shifting from judgment to curiosity, some stepping closer, their eyes no longer mocking but intrigued. A man in a pinstripe suit nodded at me, his earlier smirk gone, replaced by a look of cautious respect, his posture softening. The room was changing, the air lighter, but I wasn't sure if it was for me or for the power they now knew. I held their interest, tinged with calculation. I caught Marcus's eye across the room, his smile small but steady, like he'd known I had this strength all along, his worn jacket, a quiet defiance in this polished world. I nodded back, grateful for his quiet support, his presence a reminder of the kindness that had kept me grounded. Then Harold stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chatter, calm and deliberate, his words measured. "Your discretion has always impressed me, Ms. Willow. Sterling Ventures could partner with your nonprofit to expand its reach. What do you say?" His offer hung in the air, a lifeline. I hadn't expected a chance to bridge my two worlds, my quiet nonprofit and the empire I'd built in secret. But my mind was still reeling from Dad's words. From the weight of his realization, my heart caught between hope and the ache of years. I turned to Dad, waiting for more, but he just stood there, the scrapbook still in his hands, his eyes distant, caught in his own thoughts, his silence a weight I couldn't lift. Sienna's voice rose again, desperate now, her composure crumbling, her hands shaking. "She's manipulating everyone. Dad, don't fall for it." Her words stung, but they lacked the bite they once had, their power fading in the face of the truth. The crowd's attention was on me, not her, and I felt the ground shift beneath us, a subtle realignment of power, a moment where I wasn't the outcast anymore. But the weight of Dad's silence, the unspoken gap between us, kept me tethered to the ache I'd carried for years, a wound that hadn't yet healed, a truth still waiting to be spoken. A week after the party, I sat at a folding table in my nonprofit's community center, sunlight streaming through the windows, warming the chipped wooden floor, the air carrying the faint scent of fresh paint from a mural we'd started. I was teaching a financial literacy class, my voice steady as I explained budgeting to a small group of parents, their pencils scratching as they took notes, their faces focused but hopeful. A girl named Lila, maybe 9, sat in the corner doodling in a notebook, her bright eyes reminding me of the kid I used to be, always watching, hoping to be noticed, my heart full of quiet dreams. I smiled at her, and she grinned back, a small connection that felt like a gift, a reminder of why I kept going, why this place mattered. The center was buzzing, volunteers sorting donated books, their laughter soft in the background, a coffee pot gurgling in the back, its aroma mingling with the smell of paper and dust. I'd poured my heart into this place, a haven for people who'd been counted out like I'd been for so long, their stories echoing mine in ways I hadn't expected. Today felt different, though. The weight of that night at Dad's party hadn't left me, but it wasn't crushing anymore. Standing up to Sienna, speaking my truth, had shifted something inside me, like a window cracking open to let in fresh air, letting me breathe freer than I had in years, my heart lighter with each step I took. The door creaked and I looked up to see Dad step inside, holding a small wrapped package, his tailored jacket out of place among the mismatched chairs, his polished shoes scuffing the worn floor. My heart skipped, but I kept my cool, finishing my lesson before walking over my sneakers quiet on the scuffed floor, my hands steady despite the flutter in my chest. He looked nervous, his smile tentative but real, his eyes softer than I remembered. "Willow," he said, his voice soft, almost shy. "I wanted to see this for myself." He gestured at the room, the kids laughing, the parents taking notes. The energy of a place built on second chances, on hope. I nodded, unsure what to say. But grateful he'd come, his presence a bridge I hadn't dared hope for, a step toward something new. He handed me the package, and I unwrapped it to find a framed photo, not from the scrapbook, but a new one of me speaking at the party, my face fierce and alive, my hands gesturing with a strength I hadn't seen in myself before, my eyes bright with conviction. "I took this that night," he said, his eyes meeting mine, steady and warm, a look I hadn't seen since I was a kid. "I want you to have it." My throat tightened and I traced the frame, seeing myself through his eyes for the first time. Not the overlooked daughter, but someone strong, someone who'd built something real, something that mattered. We sat at a table and he asked about the center, listening, as I described helping families like Lila's rebuild their lives, his attention unwavering, his questions thoughtful, his presence a quiet gift. Marcus walked in now, a volunteer carrying a box of donated clothes, his work boots leaving faint dirt marks on the floor, his grin wide and unguarded. He waved, and I felt a warmth settle in me, a sense of connection that grounded me. "That guy from the party," Dad said, nodding toward Marcus, his voice tinged with respect, his eyes following him. "He's here because of you." I shrugged, but his words landed deep, a reminder that my choices had rippled outward, touching lives beyond my own building, something bigger than myself. I'd spent years hiding my strength, but that night had changed how I saw myself, and how others did too. Dad's presence here in my world felt like a step towards something new, something fragile, but real, a chance to rebuild what we'd lost, one moment at a time. I sat with Dad at the community center's table, the framed photo resting between us, its edges catching the afternoon light, the glass cool under my fingers. The room hummed with quiet activity, Lila's pencil scratching, volunteers chatting softly, their voices a gentle backdrop, but it felt like just us two sharing a space we hadn't in years, the air warm with possibility. I told him about a family we'd helped, a dad who'd found work after months of struggle, his kids now in school with new backpacks. We'd provided their smiles bright with hope. Dad's eyes softened, listening in a way he never had when I was younger. His attention a quiet gift I hadn't expected, his questions showing a curiosity I hadn't known he had. Later I walked home to my studio apartment. The city's evening buzz, a gentle backdrop, streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement, the air carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked asphalt. My phone lit up with a text from Sienna. "I'll come to the counseling session. Don't expect miracles." I read it twice. Her words sharp, but less biting, a crack in her armor I hadn't seen before, a sign she was trying, even if grudgingly. I didn't reply, just tucked the phone away, letting the moment sit, its weight lighter than it would have been before, its edges softened by time. I'd spent so long chasing her approval, Dad's too, but now I felt a quiet shift. I didn't need it anymore, not the way I once did. Inside, I sank onto my couch, the framed photo in my lap, its glass reflecting the dim light of my lamp. I thought back to a night at 18, packing a bag to leave home, vowing to build a life where I'd never feel small again, my heart bruised but fierce. That girl had been angry, hurt, her dreams fueled by defiance, her steps unsteady but determined. She'd carried me here to this moment where I could breathe without proving anything, where I could sit in my small apartment and feel whole. I looked around, my space books stacked on a thrift store shelf, their spines worn from love, a single plant by the window, its leaves curling toward the light, and felt enough steady in a way I hadn't before. Dad called later, his voice warm through the phone, a softness I hadn't heard in years, a tone that felt like home. "Can we do a quiet dinner soon? Just us. Maybe Sienna too?" I paused, the old ache stirring, but it didn't swallow me, its grip looser now. "Yeah." I said, my voice steady, calm. I'd like that. We set a date. Nothing fancy. Just a diner he used to love, its neon sign, a memory from my childhood, its glow a promise of simpler times. I hung up picturing us there. No chandeliers, no pretenses. Just a chance to start over, to talk without the weight of the past, to find each other again. I stood and walked to my window, the city lights twinkling below, a mosaic of lives crossing paths, each one a story unfolding. My reflection stared back, not the chairman or the overlooked daughter, just Willow steady and whole, my own anchor in a world I'd built. I set the framed photo on a shelf its place earned, and let the quiet settle over me, a peace I'd fought for, soft but sure, carrying me forward into a life I was shaping one moment at a time, one choice at a time. The diner smelled of coffee and warm pancakes, its red booths worn, but welcoming, the kind of place where time slowed down, where the world felt smaller, kinder. I sat across from Dad and Sienna. The table small, our plates scattered with fries and half-eaten burgers, ketchup smudged on a napkin, the air filled with the soft clink of dishes. No chandeliers, no pretense, just us trying to find a way back to each other. Our voices low, our laughter tentative but real. Dad's laugh was softer now, recounting a time he burned toast trying to make us breakfast as kids, smoke filling the kitchen while we giggled, our faces smudged with jam. I chuckled, surprised at how easily the memory came, how it didn't hurt to share it, the warmth of it settling between us like a shared secret. Sienna picked at her food. Her usual polish. Gone her nails unpainted for once. Her hands restless, twisting a napkin into knots. She looked at me, her eyes hesitant, searching for something, her guard lower than I'd ever seen. I was scared of losing everything she said quietly, her voice almost lost in the diner's hum, the clink of dishes and the murmur of other patrons. The status, the life. I thought you were a threat. It wasn't an apology, not quite, but it was honest, a crack in the wall. She'd built a glimpse of the sister I'd once known. I nodded, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking softly, letting her words settle without pushing back, giving her space to breathe, to be human. Dad reached for my hand, his grip warm but shaky, his fingers rough from years of work, his eyes meeting mine with a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. I got caught up in the wrong things, Willow, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, heavy with regret. I missed who you were becoming. His honesty caught me off guard, and I felt a knot loosen in my chest, one I'd carried since I was a kid, waiting for him to notice me. My drawings ignored for Sienna's trophies, my voice drowned out by his ambitions. I squeezed his hand back, not needing to say much, just feeling the moment, its weight both heavy and light, a bridge we were starting to cross. Back home, I walked to my nonprofit's community center most mornings, the routine grounding me, the crunch of gravel under my sneakers. A familiar sound, the morning air sharp with promise. I'd started gardening with Lila, the girl from my class, teaching her to plant herbs in old pots we'd painted together, their bright colors streaked with our laughter, the paint smudged on our hands. Her laugh, bright and unguarded, reminded me there was joy in small things, in showing up without proving anything and building something real. The center was growing, Harold's partnership had brought new funding, and Jillian had shown up to volunteer, her hands nervous but willing as she sorted donations, her earlier arrogance replaced by quiet effort, her eyes meeting mine with a tentative respect. I'd begun keeping a journal, something new, scribbling thoughts late at night when the city was quiet, the hum of traffic. A distant lullaby, my pen moving across the page like a quiet confession. It wasn't about the party or the pain, but about what I wanted now, a life where I didn't hide, where I could be enough just as I was. I wrote about Lila's excitement over a sprouting basil plant, about Dad's diner laugh, about Sienna's hesitant words, each entry a step toward clarity, a way to hold on to the person I was becoming, steady and unafraid, my heart open to the future. One evening, I sat on my apartment's fire escape, a mug of tea warming my hands, the city's hum, a soft pulse below the air, carrying the faint scent of rain and distant exhaust. The stars were faint, drowned out by streetlights, but I stared up anyway, feeling a quiet I hadn't known in years, a stillness that settled deep in my bones. That night at Dad's party had cracked something open, not just in my family, but in me. A shift I was still learning to name. I'd spent so long carrying the weight of being unseen, letting their judgment shape how I saw myself, bending to fit their expectations, shrinking to avoid their scorn. Now I was letting that go piece by piece, like leaves falling from a tree drifting away in the wind. I thought about the diner, how Dad's eyes had softened when he spoke, his voice warm with a regret. I hadn't expected how Sienna's guard had slipped just a little, her vulnerability, a bridge I hadn't seen coming. We weren't fixed, not a perfect family, but we were trying, and that was enough, a small step towards something real. My journal lay open beside me, a new entry half written about choosing to show up not for approval, but for myself, for the life I wanted to live, one grounded in truth. I'd learned that worth isn't in what others see. It's in the courage to stand in your truth, even when it's messy, even when it's hard, even when it leaves you raw. Lila's face flashed in my mind, her small hands patting soil around a basil plant. Her trust so simple and real, her eyes bright with possibility, her laughter a reminder of what mattered. Helping her building the center had shown me what I'd been searching for, not proving I was enough, but living it every day in the small moments that built a life, in the quiet acts that changed others. I could forgive Dad for his distant, Sienna for her cruelty, because holding on to anger only kept me small, tethered to a past I no longer needed. Letting go didn't mean forgetting, it meant choosing to move forward lighter, free, unburdened by the weight of their expectations. I closed my journal, the night air cool against my skin, and felt a stillness settle deep, a peace that anchored me steady and sure. The party had been a storm, but it led me here to a life where I didn't need to hide anymore, where I could be Willow, not the chairman, not the overlooked daughter, just me, whole and steady, ready for whatever came next. My heart open to the quiet beauty of simply being. What moment made you realize you could let go and just be? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, to know what's helped you find your own strength, what's carried you through your own storms. If this touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's fighting to be seen, to find their place. Thank you for listening, for being here with me, for sharing this journey. Here's to finding your own quiet strength wherever you are, wherever your path leads.